Good afternoon, Market Chameleons, and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for coming by and watching our After Hours webinar series with Ryan Mastro from OptionsRobot. Before we get started, let's take a look at the share disclaimer. Please be aware that neither Market Chameleon, OptionsRobot, Ryan, or myself are registered investment advisors or a broker-dealer. If you're searching for investment advice, please reach out to a licensed professional. This webinar, as all our webinars and shows, are for informational purposes only. Consider Market Chameleon and OptionsRobot tools and products. With that, one last look at the disclaimer. Let's welcome Ryan to the stage. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Great. Let me share your screen. Let me remove that and now share your screen.
There we go. Right back to the Market Chameleon homepage. Yeah. So, I think last week was a rough week. I mean, just to kind of quickly summarize what was going on there. I mean, clearly it was pretty ugly, right? I mean, we had a market that gave us a very ugly looking day on Thursday. NVIDIA earnings basically gapped everything up. It was all looking awesome. And then it's kind of, I think we talked about it beginning of the week, that the market was having this kind of doubt on data centers, AI, crypto was getting hit. So you had a lot of the speculative types of things that were going on in our market just feeling kind of ugly. And I think Thursday was that kind of culmination of a bunch of different things where you had NVIDIA earnings, you had Walmart earnings in the morning. And NVIDIA was good, right? I mean, for the most part, their numbers were solid on the kind of top line. But when you start to dig into it, that's when people started to kind of question a couple things, right? There was the amount of capacity at Taiwan Semi was kind of threw some curveballs there, because if NVIDIA thinks they're going to continue to powerhouse through and have all of this demand, you would think they would continue to need demand at Taiwan Semi, and that's not the case. They're not reserving any of that capacity. We're not reserving as much as they were, let's put it that way. So that was one thing. Some of the circular financing, they came out and said maybe there's not going to be an investment in the OpenAI. So that was one thing I think that caught people off guard. And then they did some, shenanigans with adjusting some of their kind of, I think they said their regions where they do business, and they took away the whole Singapore thing. So trying to kind of wash that under the rug. So, there's some shenanigans going on there, but I think that happens with every company. I think, unfortunately, though, there's a lot of people that are now starting to call NVIDIA and, the circular financing that's going on, all these different companies, Oracle and OpenAI and Microsoft and AI and NVIDIA and the funding, and trying to basically get that back with CoreWeave, with SMCI, all these different companies. It's kind of doing what Enron did, basically self-finance themselves to try to make them look better and go forward with it. So we'll have to see. They had, today was a good day, right? They rallied it up. They had again, when you start to, kind of dive into this a little bit, let me open this up for you guys so you can see a little bit better. And just drag this down and move this up so you see, better scaling this way, that way. Sorry, it looks a little bit deceiving. So the close, though, was better than the last, 4 or 5 closes here, right? So that's a solid day for us to be able to get that kind of movement all the way back, recover between Friday and today on NVIDIA. It didn't gap down today, didn't retest lows. So that's, I'm sorry, I'm still on the Qs. I apologize. I'm trying to talk about NVIDIA. It did basically, I was going to say, I didn't think it got up that far, but I must have thought I was missing something. So NVIDIA, again, the big reversal here, got ugly on Friday and rallied up today. So it was a solid day that it got back above 100. I'm thinking, wow, I apologize for that. So a couple other names that were on the radar, and we've talked about. Walmart basically had their earnings. They gapped up, but they're selling back into those. Costco coming out with earnings, but they're still down near the lows. They actually made a lower low today, so that could be on your radar. Just a couple things that were on my radar. I would definitely keep watching what's going on in Bitcoin, right? And I think use something like an IBIT, which is a good proxy for, it's one of the largest ETFs for Bitcoin. And it's looking okay, nothing really great at the moment. Another one is Ethereum, trying to look all right. You can get into some of those names that are like BMNR, which is another kind of trust for buying Ethereum. You have your MicroStrategies, which has been under fire. This is one that I think a lot of people are watching to see if that can recover. So there's been a lot of names in the speculation bubble. I think Coin did okay today, right? That started to rally back up with what was going on in MicroStrategies and Hood and some of your miners like Riot and Mara. So they need to kind of really get out of their own way and just really needs to ride the wave of Bitcoin if we can get Bitcoin going. So that being said, let's look at some of the UOA that came in today. And we can kind of see Google, by far, Google came out last week and set the world on fire. And just come back to that chart, it's one I did want to mention, one that's been on our radar, multiple services. So this is one that I think there's a multi, you know, I wouldn't say I've been bearish on it, but I have not been as bullish as I am now. And the main reason is you actually do any kind of reading on it. One, their Gemini 3 release has just been on fire, right? It's everybody's talking about it. CEO of Salesforce basically came out and said, I've been using ChatGPT for 2 years and I just tried Gemini 3 and I'm not going back. So that's such a vote of confidence from a big institutional player like Mark Benioff. And that's a big kind of vote of confidence. So between that, you had Warren Buffett make a big investment in them. That's 2. All of their other platforms are doing very well. Your YouTube, your Google Chrome, their investment in Waymo. So these guys are hitting on all cylinders and now at the forefront of this. Now, really why the Gemini set things on fire was because they use TPUs, their own TPUs. So they make these TPUs for themselves. And this is basically a massive savings for them to basically own the entire stack versus throwing NVIDIA chips in here. So this is kind of that kick in the groin to a NVIDIA. Even OpenAI came out and said, Gemini 3 is looking great, right? So they openly admitted like, hey, it looks good, and they got work to do. So this is one I think Google's going to be the leader for a while. It doesn't mean that the others can't go up, but I think Google is going to have this kind of underpin of support underneath of it that's going to continue to be buyers, even on small pullbacks. So I think that's definitely one you want to keep on your radar. So, that's right at the forefront here in terms of the volume today. You can see why that continues to go up. Netflix was somewhat bearish today, just to kind of go through some of these names. ONDS I thought was interesting, just to switch this back. ONDS, look at the chart. ONDS, I thought this was interesting in the sense that, he's kind of recenter this for you, that we've taken out all this action. So on the chart, it definitely looks very interesting. It's a cheap name. It's $8.71. So this could be something you're interested in, trying to get back up to this highs back over in here, right? That's about $11. So that may be something on your radar. So that hit up here in the top, 192,000 versus 94,000 in terms of the average volume. Merck was interesting. CAPR, Zoom, I'm not really interested in. BTG, I think gold and silver continue to be a relatively strong play. I think when you look at what China's done, where we have been in silver, I think the BTG is going to be one that is a big player. Maybe not as big. There's some volume in there. It's a cheaper name. I think it's only like $4. Let me just make sure that is, $4. So you're sitting here right below kind of that red line, which is the 100-day. Then you have this swing high here, which is 424. So I'd probably use that as an entry level on that one. But I'm not going to put that one in right now. There's a couple other names I want to look for in here. Lennar looks okay. ANF is one I want to mention too. This is going into earnings tomorrow morning, and it looks like crap. No offense to anybody that's in here, but it does look lousy. So you are at the lowest low out of all of this action, multi-year low. So this just looks very, very lousy after having such a great run, right? This was going into January 24, and then basically been in a downtrend since. So this feels like this could start to get very heavy, maybe even come back down. Breakout area for me, where it broke out from back in here in 2023, was around this 47 area. So we're trading 65. We could definitely see a haircut here of about $13 into a gap right here, right? You have another gap down below that. So that's down at 23 in terms of that gap. So I just be very on guard with this one in terms of, how that starts to look. I would look at the options. I'm not trading it. I don't suggest option plays for earnings. Try to steer away from that. But for this week, what they're showing for expiration is roughly 870 on the offer of the straddle. And what that's basically showing you is how wide the market makers, or where the market makers are willing to sell that implied volatility. So that's a good marker of where the expected move, or at least where the market makers think this could get to based off of the implied vol. So that could be something that you keep an eye on, but maybe you don't want to trade it. Maybe trade it first thing tomorrow morning. So just coming down through here, obviously I think Google is a big play. I talked about Amazon earlier in the week. So this is one. Amazon, I think, is poised for maybe a bigger bounce. We're going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday. They typically do pretty well around that. So this could be one. I actually already have it on as a position, I believe, right in here. So we already had this set up. I talked about this last, I think, Thursday or Friday, and put out a trade idea on my Twitter page. So again, that's one you can follow, and you get some ideas there. But we had jumped into an option here, the 222s, and we're going to roll these up by every $4. Today was a good day, right? But what was the amount today? It moved up 222.50. So we got to get up to probably a little bit higher. I think we closed at around 226. So this is basically going to be suggesting 226. That's where we got to get to, right? So we're basically, I'm not sure why we didn't trigger. Maybe we just didn't get filled. So that's one I'm going to be watching here. Oh no, you're basically saying 224. Sorry, it's 228.26. So I need a couple more dollars on that one. So hopefully tomorrow we get a good roll there. Basically what this does, we'll roll it up, and then I got my stops built in for a couple of times here to be able to trade. So Amazon is one. If we go back over to here and look for stock screeners, going down through this list, this does volume this way. Apple's right on the top. I want to look at that. I want to look at NVIDIA. I'm not really buying into NVIDIA quite yet. I'm not really positive that's going to be able to keep going up. I think the chips and the kind of rally out of the market was kind of a big deal here. But just looking, I'm going to look down through a couple of these names. But Apple caught my eye earlier. So let's go back over to Apple on the chart. And this is one I think you probably want to have on your radar. And I'm going to set an alert. If I come back over to here, get out of, let's see, just recenter this so you can see it a little bit better. So this one in here, the high today was 276.98. This high here was 276.70. So we took out this high. So that's a good sign that this cup may be getting a little bit bigger and wants to kind of take out the highs from here, and can use the height of this cup, right? The distance between here and the low, that's about 264 to 280. So, that's a good move if we can get this follow through. So this high here is 277.32, and we just missed that by 30 cents. So I would probably use this high as my entry level, right? In terms of 277.32. Let's do a quick entry bot on that one. Entry bot, and we're going to say Apple greater than 277. I'm going to say a little bit higher, maybe 277.40. I want to get past that high, see if there's sellers that come in, but I'll jump into and at the money on that one. So that would be the 277. No, I'm going to do a specific strike, 277.50s. And I'm just going to do that for a quick trade. We did add a risk graph here for anybody that wants to kind of see where your profitability is on that. So that's one that, along with the chart, trying to give you guys more opportunity in there. So in terms of that one, I then look at, I'm going to skip this for 1 second, look at what my ATR is. ATR on this is about $6. So if I go back over to my positions now and come down here, I can add a template. So I just want to create a template in here. $6. I'm probably going to do something like, that's $2. This is $2. So $6. I'd probably do something like this, where I roll my option up with the stock price moving up every $2. So every $2 on this thing, once I get in, I'll be rolling my option up unless I have a 30% pullback. So just to show that, so I have a $2, 30% pullback, $2, 30% pullback, and these are rolling the options up, and then I would exit. So if it has a full ATR tomorrow and breaks out and goes over $6, I've made a really good trade. I rolled my options up and I've gotten out of the trade by the end of the day. So I can extend that at any point. I could say, don't, I can make this by $4 or $6 if I feel like, okay, there's something else going on here that I want to stay in the trade and just widen the spreads out as well. So that's one idea that I think could be on the radar. And coming back over here to the list of names, Meta had a really good day. A little expensive to trade, so I'm probably not going to recommend that out. AVGO had a really good day today. Tesla had a good day today. Just to show you Tesla, man, Tesla was absolutely on fire today. I couldn't believe how much it was moving, but this got thrown out there on the idea of chips and that the amount of chips that they make themselves for their own Teslas to keep the cars running, operate everything. So that really was a nice close, right? Close above all of this action, right? This is the highest close out of all of this. So I'd like to see tomorrow follow through, get back up to the 50 and have a nice little run on that. So that's definitely one as we're watching. Again, this is all sorted for you guys by, through all this action. Lilly continued to make higher highs. That was on my radar. There was one down here that I thought I had that I liked that I wanted to share. Walmart wasn't it. Berkshire was okay. Taiwan Semi definitely looks interesting as well. Even though we had the earnings from NVIDIA last week not that great, but it ended up having a pretty decent day today. Closed above a lot of this. Now, you may want to keep an eye on the storage names. We talked about these. MU, AMAT kind of gets lumped in there, but you also have WDC, which had a really good return in terms of coming back up to a green candle. You have STX, which is Seagate, and then you have SNDK, which has been the high flyer. So this is really trying to come back. These are a little bit more volatile, so I just want you to be aware of what's going on here. This thing's a $277 stock, and you basically are moving about $26 a day. So pretty aggressive when you're moving on average about 10% of the stock price, right? So you got to be aware that that is moving and how that's moving on if you're trying to jump into something like that. So let me see. Let me just look for if there's anything else on the downside that we could look at. I'm going to go back to those. Let's just go back to the homepage and go to the UOA. So UOA, I thought there was one on here that I saw was bearish. EPD was one. Hey, maybe it's the ANF that I'm thinking of. That's maybe that was it. But the EPD is another one that you probably want to keep on your radar. I like this chart. I don't know the company well enough to really recommend it, but EPD. And if you zoom out the chart, this looks good, right? Kind of have this going on. But if you look back, this has been in such a big consolidation. And I think if you start to take out this area, now why I liked it is because of the big gap back in here and potentially that this is kind of on the upper end of this. So I need to see a little bit more work, a little bit more, maybe if it closed up near the high, that would be kind of right up here. So right now, all that did was test this high and fail. So I need to see a little bit more work, maybe at least closing above this open here. That open is 32.70. So maybe just a close above there would be one. So let's just do that as an entry bot. We'll say EPD and we'll say greater than 32.70. I'll say 75 so we get a little bit more. And we'll do that. We'll do add options and I'll do, yeah, that's fine. And we'll do quick just to get me into the trade quicker. And for something like this that has, let me see if I can just get the ATR of this. ATR is about, doesn't move that much, right? It only moves about 50 some cents a day. So I would definitely be on the lower end of this one where, again, if you get a couple dollars out of this, you want to try to be pretty quick with it. So I'm going to use that same, even though it's a much cheaper stock and only moving a couple of bucks, I want to give myself a little bit of room to breathe because of that big gap that's behind it. So something like that I would, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the wrong one. I want to preview the group there. Preview the group. So if it goes up by $2, then I stop myself out if it falls back by 30%, something like that. And I do that. It would roll up if I'm profitable. It would stop me out if I'm not. It would roll me up again if I'm profitable and stop me out. I'm sorry, it would roll me up. And then the last one is I basically get out of it. It would basically exit me up roughly $6 in the stock and rolling up my option. So that's all I have for you, Will. I don't know if that's if there's any questions I can answer.
We had two symbols, Jim. from the morning show wanted to ask about. One is IBIT, one is Netflix.
Yeah, IBIT I think is trying to move back up. I mean, what I would typically do is I would typically draw a trend in this thing, right? So you start to look at the downside and you say, okay, well, I got trend there. Then we have another trend that is basically it started to pick up pace, so kind of drawing through the highs. And then you start to say like, oh crap, this thing's starting to go a little bit more. It's really starting to pick up pace in the sense that it took out really like the slope was really starting to drop off here. So it's basically this exact same thing as what's going on in Bitcoin. So what I'd like to see is that one, it's broken trend, so it's starting to move back up. But maybe you have to have something like taking out the high right in there. That high is 51.97. So then it gives you at least a positive feeling that not only you broken trend there, but you get back above a resistance level. You can see the close, the open right in there. So those 4 candles presents a pretty good level, maybe back above 52. It's a pretty good move already, right? To come from the low. Low was 46.68. So, but to wait for 52 makes you seem like forever. But I think that's probably a good spot to give you confidence that this thing's going to continue to try to run here, right? And I would probably target some of the other slopes as you come on the way down. So you go through here, then you want to kind of get through this slope, then you want to kind of get through that upper slope, then you're going to be getting up towards the 50. I'm sorry, that 200, that is that blue line. Bigger targets there. After that, the swing high, the 50, the 100, swing high again. So just working your way up through that resistance. The other one is Netflix. Netflix got hit bad last week, right? Between the 1-2 punch of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Friday was, ended up really lousy. And I was hoping we were going to have a much bigger recovery today, and we just didn't, right? It really didn't get anywhere. So I'd like to see a little bit more out of that. Maybe you don't have to go as far to kind of feel, decent about it. If I were to put in like a level somewhere around that, that's right around 108.70. So our high today was 108.02. So maybe that's a good level. You kind of get back up through some of these closes and lows. That makes you feel better. And then use some of the data. Like this close here on last Wednesday was 110. So maybe you get a 110, play for something like maybe that close there. That's 111.22. Then play for the 200 day. That 200 day is 113.33. So like to see it back above the 200 day for me to maybe jump into a longer term position and want to kind of continue to ride that, because right now it kind of looks ugly. Again, if you were to draw a trend from peaks here, you're just like, yeah, it's just not doing what it should be doing. And now you're kind of picking up pace coming down through this action. So you want to see it break that lower declining trend, move back up, start to take out critical levels for you to really start jumping. But I think from a company wise, it's still a solid company. So you just got to make sure you feel comfortable where you want to get in on that one.
All right. We had someone ask about gold.
Yeah, gold, I'm still bullish on. Yeah, I mean, I talked about that BTG earlier. So it's still that, BTG and some of the miners have gotten beaten up. But if you look at like the GLD, I think the GLD still looks pretty good. There's a lot of people are saying, okay, well, you're caught in this descending level, kind of what I just drew on all the other ones in terms of saying it looks lousy. But the flip side of this is you have kind of this ascending triangle here at the moment, or descending, depending on how you want to look at it, or a symmetrical triangle. I mean, I look at it as more symmetrical at the moment, but I like that all of the lows look a lot better than the highs. And I think there's been a lot of institutional selling that have been trying to keep this down. But so you have a couple different things that came out last week that I would say I'm still bullish on gold and silver, more silver than gold. China has stopped allowing their precious metals to leave the country. So that's a very big deal, especially silver. I'm not sure if that's confirmed on gold, but I'm pretty confident that was on silver. So that's a big deal. So they're looking at this as very critical. Goldman Sachs came out and said that they believe that they have underreported the amount of gold and silver that they bought. When you look at the exports from London, they basically think they bought about 30% more gold and silver than they let on to. So trying to kind of keep it under the radar. So if that's the case, looking at different metrics of exports and where things have been shipped to, that's a pretty big deal, because that means they control the world's largest amount of gold and silver, in terms of, or at least I should say, they've imported the most amount of gold and silver in the last year by far. So that, to me, and I don't think we have enough physical for a lot of these institutions that keep trying to hold silver in check. So if you go to the SLV, right, I don't think there's enough silver to kind of, what they do is they paper it over. So what that means is they sell the paper futures, and that's basically a promise in the future to be able to deliver it. Well, they don't have to deliver it. They can always just buy back the future if they're hitting, getting kind of screwed there. They basically buy it back to close it. So, again, what they try to do, and they've been doing, I think, something like 900 million ounces they've been selling into this in the past couple of weeks to try to hold silver down. And if this whole thing with China comes true, London's not going to have enough inventory to cover all the people they're buying. So that means the COMEX is going to be in a difficult position, and London's going to be in a very difficult position to make deliveries. And if that breaks down, that whole model breaks down, then the shit hits the fan. And that's when gold and silver start to go nuts. So that's how I think this is going to play out. I think we're finally on that page where the people that are coming in shorting may get their just due. Let's put it that way.
Ooh. Could be some bloody faces if that happens.
Yeah, institutional wise. And I think we're just getting to that point, Will, where the rest of the world is kind of tired of Wall Street doing what Wall Street does.
Very interesting. Very interesting, Ryan. Thanks for bringing this to the Chameleon community. Another great episode. Any last comments about OptionsRobot, if people want to try it out, how they do that?
Yeah, so we actually, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be starting with some AI, and I'll be bringing that to you guys in the next, couple of weeks here as I start to show it. But we've done a couple really cool things where if you get into a position, we actually have the ability to, and I got to put on the staging, and I'll pull that up for you guys. But we have a little button up here that will pull up. You can analyze your position, and it will recommend the templates to use based off of what's going on in your opinion and what's going on in the market. It gives you a summary of all the stuff, looks at the market, looks at the technicals, and gives you a couple recommendations on that. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. So if you do want to try it, go to OptionsRobot.com. The turkey coupon is still valid all the way through the end of the month. So you can check that out, and you get I believe it's a 40% discount. And I've said it before, but if you're interested, or you really think you're going to want to use it, buy the annual package, because it's a one-time use coupon. So you basically get 40% off for the annual package versus just buying 1 month at 40% off. So gives you a better deal. So hopefully that's something people enjoy.
All right. Great job as always, Ryan. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next Monday. Everyone have a great Turkey Day, and thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining another episode with Ryan and OptionsRobot. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. I know I always do. Remember, we have our live show with Dimitri tomorrow at 9 a.m. And with that, everyone have a good evening, and we will see you hopefully tomorrow. Bye.